billionaires treat 90 days like their 1 year. They can essentially do 4 times the amount that the average person will do. There's a transactional period within it and then a transformational period within it. You have to ask yourself, like, what are the beliefs that you were given as a child? Like, what did your parents tell you about money? And then challenge those beliefs.
What was like the key thing or some of the key things you really had to break or unlearn?
You know, there were many, many months of anger and frustration and, you know, how could they do this to me kind of thoughts. That switch to no one did this to me, it happened for me. At that absolute rock bottom, I realized like I have nothing. What are you going to do? And I got myself fully, completely out of debt because the only resource I had left was my brain. We used to always just say, I want $10 million. Why? What would you do with it? Money needs a purpose.
Hey Balancers, and welcome to another episode of the Balance Theory podcast. Today I am joined by someone whose YouTube content I was very much drawn to, and I'm really excited to get to know her on a personal level. I'm not sure how much of what we're going to talk about today you've actually shared on your own channel, which I know is a lot in the trading and finance kind of space. Also a topic that I'm personally quite interested in. I've not shared too much about it on the podcast. It's something I dabble in my legal side as well. But today I am really keen to hear kind of how your experience in that field converges with how you approach life in general and just get to know a little bit more about you. So today's guest is Annie from the Trade Travel Chill channel. Annie, a warm welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. And actually, my community don't know anything really about me personally, so probably going to reveal some secrets here.
There you go. Well, this is going to be an exclusive get to know Annie BTS situation. No, also, for those listening, can also probably tell that Annie's a fellow Australian. It's always, I don't know how you feel, but it's always like a weird experience for me when I'm with Aussies in Dubai because it's normally like British or someone else. So when I see Aussies, I'm like, I just feel like I'm home.
Yeah.
You know? It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, and it's good to recognise the accent and go, oh, there they are. Yeah, because you're right. I haven't met many Aussies in Dubai at all.
We're unicorns, special. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Trade, Travel, Chill, the concept, a little bit about what you do, and then I'm going to pick your brain on how you actually got there because that's an interesting story in itself.
Okay. So Trade, Travel, Chill is essentially an online education platform that specialises in teaching people how to trade and invest in cryptocurrency. It started really organically, but, you know, now it's grown into this thing and we have a very unique trading method that I think people really resonate with, especially those that generally have been trading for a couple of years and it's not working out for them. And then they come across my content and it's kind of like a light bulb moment because I focus a lot on why things happen as opposed to just draw this pattern and then price will do X, Y, and Z. And so I think that's really important to understand why a market will shift in a certain way. And when you can see that on the chart before the headlines talk about significant events, then you can protect yourself a lot better.
100%. For those listening, a lot of you may not know this, but my husband's actually also a crypto trader. Yeah. So I actually have some context behind how it works, what it looks like, what it involves. But for those listening who maybe they've heard about people trading stocks or crypto, whatever it is, in its essence, how can you simplify the skill or the niche of trading? Like what is it? What are you actually doing when you talk about trading markets?
Yeah, so there's 2 ways to trade the markets. One is called technical analysis, which is what I do, and the other is called fundamental analysis. So fundamental analysis is when you look into a company and you do some really deep dive research on that company. You're looking into its founders, into the history, what have they done before, do they have a community, you know, lots of how they've developed their tokens when it's in relation to cryptocurrency. There's a lot of work that you have to do, and at the end of the day, it's almost an emotional decision because you have to have this fundamental sort of belief after you've done that research that this company is going to eventually turn into something. And essentially everything that you're researching is a promise of something they're trying to do. Most of the time, they haven't done it yet. Yes, exactly. But technical analysis is simply just looking at a chart on a screen of the price action. So based on that, you will make certain decisions about whether or not, well, A, where you should buy into this thing, and B, where you should essentially take the profit. With technical analysis, learning the skill is the hard part. That's the part that takes a lot of time. But once you have the skill, it's very, very easy. So you can make money from the markets a lot quicker than if you were to be a fundamental analyst. However, the downside to it is the battle between your mindset and your relationship with money. Because at the end of the day, we're all taught growing up that money is something we all need in our lives. It buys the things that we want. It gives us the lifestyle that we want. And therefore, to waste money is a bad thing. And we're also taught to not be wrong, right? It's not okay to be wrong. But when you learn to trade the markets based purely off price action, you cannot be right 100% of the time. And you have to learn to be okay with that. So ego comes in a lot. Your relationship with money comes in a lot. And a lot of the time, it's kind of like health. You know how they say that your health is 80% what you eat and 20%, how fit you are, but everyone goes to the gym. Right? It's like that. So if you're with trading, 20% is the skill, 80% is your mindset. But a lot of people will spend all their time trying to get the skill, and then they haven't worked on what they need to up here, and that's why it's so difficult to master. But if you know that, if you learn about your relationship with money, and you can detach yourself from the outcome of that dollar figure at the end of it, then you can be a successful trader.
I think this is precisely why so many people maybe don't do it or are not successful in it. I think there's some crazy stat that's like 1% of all traders are successful, right?
Yeah.
And I had no idea until my husband really went deep on this journey how much of a personal growth journey it would be for him. Like, I just thought, you're learning a new skill, like starting a business. I didn't actually correlate the fact that he'd have to learn all these things. And it's been so interesting watching kind of his metamorphosis and growth in that space, because you're right, like the bulk of it is that 80%, which is the mindset that comes behind it. I want to talk to you a little bit about something you shared on your channel a few weeks ago. You spoke about it being something that you learned from, I think it was Billionaires, and how they kind of approach goal setting. And goal setting is something I'm really passionate about, and I love talking about it. But you spoke about it in terms of a 90-day framework, as opposed to, say, like yearly goal setting.
Yes.
And this was something I found really interesting, and even like the stages within those 90 days. So I'd love for you to share, I guess, how you came across that and how you apply it in your own goal setting.
Yes. So I came across that from one of my mentors. Essentially, the idea behind it is that billionaires treat 90 days like their 1 year. So billionaires get to the point that they are, and they're able to achieve so much because they can essentially do 4 times the amount that the average person will do, because everything is broken down into 90-day goals, as opposed to, you start a new year and you say, what do I want to achieve by the end of the year? Usually a year feels so far away that it's actually demotivating. You think, or you can build goals that just feel too big, and so, or you can have a big goal, but if you have that big goal, you should still break it down into, what do I have to achieve in 90 days in order to eventually get there? But then the 90 days, once you've designed that becomes the thing you focus on. You don't worry about the big 1 year goal, So the idea behind it, and why I like it so much, is because there's a transactional period within it and then a transformational period within it. And I think the transactional period is the thing that most people don't think about when they're creating goals. And what it is the transactional period is the first 30 days. And so after you've decided what your goals are for the 90 days, in the transactional period, you're not actually working towards those goals in any way. All you're doing is cutting out the things that are going to stop you from getting that goal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So do you kind of sit down and work out what those things are first?
Yes. So you first ask yourself, what are your biggest, what can hurt you the most? and what are your biggest weaknesses. So once you know those 2 things, or well, there'll be 6 things because you write 3 of each. Once you know those, then you know that you got to find the solutions to these. You got to figure out, for example, what can hurt you. I procrastinate. Okay, we got to stop doing that in 30 days. So it can be as simple as that, or it can be something a lot bigger, but you have to identify what your weaknesses are. And then from there, you spend those 30 days trying to just change your habits essentially, or change whatever you need to. And this plan can be used in any area of your life. I personally do it for business, but it can be used for anything. If you wanted to use it as a health thing, well, okay, do you eat junk food at night? That's a weakness. That's something you got 30 days to cut out. So you can use it for anything. But I essentially use it for business. And I found ever since I've started using it, which I've been using it for a few years now, I'm always smashing goals every single month on what I want to achieve. And things come to me so much quicker because I'm not thinking, oh, I want to be a bajillionaire in the future. I'm just thinking, what do I have to do now?
Yes.
It's almost like I have this to-do list of what I have to do now. And the hardest thing about building habits is just the initial few days, of breaking a bad cycle. But after that, the momentum comes and it's easy, and it turns from a drag of forcing yourself to do this new thing to now needing to do this new thing because you need it in your life. And it makes you feel good because you feel progression. So, you first identify your weaknesses, then you work on fixing that or your bad habits. You work on fixing that over 30 days. Once you've cleared that, you're now free to kick the goals over the next 60 days, which is the transformational period.
This 2-part approach is so important, and I actually myself have put together a little bit of a goal setting system, and quite similarly a very key part of that. I always say I used to approach goal setting whereas I just write the goal out and then try and achieve it.
Yeah.
But if you approach it with there's some foundation work to be done up front, almost 50% of achieving the goal is you doing it up front, which is a very, very important part, is identifying what are your limitations. Because as much as you consciously want something, I'm not sure if you've come across this in therapy, but I've worked with my own therapist and she taught me a lot about the subconscious. Yes. And so subconsciously what you think and feel about yourself will drive where you're going despite consciously what you actually want to achieve.
Absolutely.
So if I'm here saying, I want to start this business, but in the back of my head, I believe I'm not good enough to do it, I'm going to block myself.
Yeah.
So I always say, think about how you feel when you write the goal, and that will point to potentially blocks or limitations. I used to maybe still do a little bit, have this with money and my money mindset. So I think identifying these things up front gives you the best chance of achieving it, because it's things you need to stop. Effectively, we always think of what do I need to start doing to achieve my goal? What do I need to add on to my routine or start learning or whatever. But we also need to stop a lot of things, because our goal is all the time is about who we become, not about what we achieve, because you go through a transformation in that process.
Yes.
So you got the first 30 days, which is you, I guess, stopping anything that's going to be harmful. So when at the start of this 90-day period, when you're sitting down, when you're preparing for the quarter coming up, do you sit and identify, okay, first 30 days is the focus, and the next 60 days, how do you kind of plan for that period? Is it a case of micro steps? Is it a case of action? Do you have a to-do list? How do you kind of plan out the whole time?
Yeah. So the whole thing is planned in advance. So as soon as I'm coming towards the end of my last 90 days, I'm making the plan for the next 90 days. And this whole thing fits on one page, by the way. So it's on one page. Better. Yeah. And it is stuck in multiple places in my house, so that even if I'm not looking at it, I'm subconsciously seeing, my mind is seeing it, which I believe in a lot as well. You don't have to physically consciously pay attention to something for your mind to make that your reality. So I have it everywhere around my house. And so I know what I'm working on for the 30 days. Once I've moved through that, it's a simple 5 things that I want to achieve. And how I do that is what I will work out in the 60 days. So I don't write out, for example, if I wanted to one of the things I want to do now is run a retreat, right? So we'll use that as an example. If I want to run a retreat, I'm not going to make a full plan of how I'm going to do that now. All I'm going to say is find the venue, pick the country, 5 very simple one-liners on what I need to do. When it gets to that 60 days, that's when I start breaking it down further and go, okay, well, how am I going to pick the country? What factors do I need to consider? What month should it be in, and all that sort of stuff. So go into detail within the 60 days, with the goal being by the end of the 60 days, I kind of, I've ticked the box on all my 5 things to do. And then I also, just as a bit of a bonus, I always put a financial goal at the end of it as well, because just that I'm just a finance person, and the thing is with money, it's the only thing you can actually really measure as well. Not the only thing, but it's the easiest thing to measure, right? You either made it or you didn't, so it just helps me with my mindset to go, okay, yes, I also grew this month by having my focus in the right place.
Interesting. I'd love to actually circle back to your money mindset, because everyone has a different money mindset, and it really just comes down to how you were raised, what you were exposed to, what your own thoughts about money are. Was there anything major you had to shift with where you were to where you are now that really has helped you embrace this new career that you're in now?
Yes, big time. And I don't think there is anything that will really challenge your beliefs around money more so than learning to trade. Like it really, it's another level, So initially I grew up in a, kind of middle class family. My father was very frugal, but he was very, very good with money. My mum came from a very wealthy family and didn't really have to worry about money. She was always saved by the parents. So when my parents divorced, my dad was okay because he was responsible. He was an accountant and knew how to manage money. And my mum never had a job. She didn't know how to pay a bill. So she had to learn everything from scratch. And, she was gifted the house that was fully paid off, and because she didn't really understand the value of that, she started borrowing against this house and borrowing until she was like fully mortgaged against a fully paid off house previously, which was the biggest mistake ever, and in between all of that, her father had passed away, so she now didn't have these parents to kind of lean on, and she had to figure it out. And so I learned, I had one parent who was amazing with money and just lived a happy life. My dad traveled a lot, like we do, like we were talking about before, and he did over 70 countries in his lifetime and died with 0 debt. My mum was like the complete opposite. She's still alive today, but she is very late on in her life learning to manage money and invest. So I didn't want to end up on the mum path. I wanted to be in the dad path. I wanted to be free, traveling and able to afford it, and debt free. That was, I think that's the biggest gift of all. So, because both of them were essentially entrepreneurs. And so I went down the entrepreneurial path and I made the mistakes of my mother. My business was doing well, so I was borrowing money to buy a car and buy this and buy that. And then that just became a massive financial burden. Then the business closed down because of bad partners, and I was left with all of this debt. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Because I have no income now and I have huge debt and I don't even know how I'm going to make the money or what I need to do. And I had to go on this huge path of learning how to negotiate with banks, take them on by myself, couldn't afford a lawyer or anyone to help me. And it was like the worst time in my life. And at the time I was then trying to learn to trade as well. And I was doing okay sometimes, but then my mindset would come into it and I would put too much money on a trade and then I would lose it all and just keep going back, 1 step forward, 10 steps back and crying and just everything. And then on top of all of that, which I haven't mentioned so far, when my father passed away, my sister sued me for the inheritance. And so this was at the time that I lost my business. So I had to trying to grieve the loss of my father, who was my best friend, and I'd lost my business, and then my sister, my family of all people, decided that this was the time to put this extra thing on me and wouldn't sort it out as a family, or I was like, let's just use mum as the mediator and let's just sort this out, but didn't want to do that. So then I was forced into legal fees that I couldn't afford on top of everything else. And I tell you, there's like, when I tell you rock bottom, like it was rock bottom. I did not want to get out of bed. I actually spent 2 months in bed. But now, like I said to you before, things don't happen to you, they happen for you. Now I realize like that just made me so resilient and so strong, because at that absolute rock bottom, I realized like, what are they going to do? Like, I have nothing. What are you going to do? Mm-hmm. You know, and strength came from that. And that's when I just went, just like, don't stress over this. Like there's nothing they can take from you. You don't have anything. I learned about the law, like about the debt law and everything, how it all worked in Australia, and took on the banks and negotiated myself. And I got it was $500,000 debt at the time. I got it down to 46,000. Wow. And I got myself completely out of debt, because the only resource I had left was my brain. There was nothing else. So there was nothing else in the way. And so then from there, that changed my relationship with money, because what I realized is I went to that low, right? Where in my mind, like it was, I know people have worse lives than that, but for me, it was really bad, you know, like
it's your relative.
Yeah. You know, I'd created this life for my child, and I'm a single parent, and the thought of not being able to maintain that life that your child has become used to, like it's heartbreaking. And so, yeah, it was just a really horrible time. But once I got back on my feet, once I got that power to go, what are they going to do? And then just fight that. And then that just led to one little bit more, you know, piece of strength every day. And then eventually got the courage to start another business. And now this business is 1,000,000 times better than the last business that I had, and in every way. And I realized, no one can ever break me down. Like I will always be able to pick myself up no matter what. And now because of that, because I have that belief in myself, like we were saying before, our thoughts are so important. Now I have no attachment to money at all. I don't think about it. If I take profit on a trade, I couldn't even tell you how much it was, because it's irrelevant to me. I look at the percentage that I made, because that's what's important as a trader, not the dollar figure. And I don't think about it. It's all just a part of the skill. Did I do this one right? Yeah, I did. Yeah, good, go. I did it. Great. Well done. Let's move on. And I have a complete detachment to money. And I think that is so powerful, because I just know now that like money vibrates up here, and so do I. And that's why I get it.
I've heard a lot about like, you know, your energy, the frequency of money and your frequency, and how that kind of matches. But thank you, by the way, for sharing, I guess, that really dark time in your life. It almost, though, as a third party, sounds to me like that was so necessary to build this fortress and fire within you. Yes. That's now allowed you to be so detached and be so successful as a trader. Yeah. It's just interesting, right, how our life events shape us in certain ways. But, of course, we can't discount your own determination to take charge of that. It just goes to show the power of your mindset when it comes to money. You know, everyone has such a different story. For anyone listening who's interested to like think about it on their own terms and like relative to their own experience, what kind of questions did you have to ask yourself, or would you get someone in your community to ask themselves about money, to understand where they sit with it and maybe identify some places they can work on it?
First of all, you have to ask yourself, like, what are the beliefs that you were given as a child? Like, what was ingrained into you? What did your parents tell you about money? And then challenge those beliefs. Like, is there any fact behind this? Is it true? You know, a lot of people think that rich people are greedy. Are they? Where's the fact? Or are they just working hard and they're getting what they deserve, you know? So I think you have to challenge your beliefs. I think also you have to think about your belief about yourself. Do you really think you deserve it? And I also think that is probably something that you have to challenge yourself on every milestone. Yeah. Because even like right now, I've kind of hit a level and I really want the next level, but every month it's like not exactly coming to me, and I'm questioning myself, do I maybe think I don't deserve it yet? And so I don't think that ever goes away.
Yeah.
You know, you'll hit the level and then there's another level, and what you do to get to one level cannot be the same to get to the next. Something has to grow, something has to change. And so I think you always have to question yourself, but don't beat yourself up about it. It just is what it is. Just question it, analyze it, take the emotion out, look for some facts, and look for like, what do you need to change about it? I also would question, like, why do you want it? Why do you want it? You know, I have a friend who used to always just say, I want $10 million. And then we're like, why? What would you do with it? Oh, I don't know. Money needs a purpose, right? So you have to know why you want what you want. You know, we all want money not just to have money. We want it for a certain lifestyle, or we want to look after family, or there's something that we want to do with it. So you have to know that as well. So question yourself on that. I think when I think about trading specifically and the type of people that come into trading, I think, like I said, a lot of people come in because they need to make more money, or they're in a job. This is a very common one. They're in a job that they don't like, and so they want to learn to trade so they don't have to work. I think that's the biggest mistake. They say the average millionaire has 7 sources of income. Why do you just want one? Why are you being small? Right?
Yeah.
No, if you don't like your job, just go find one you do like, do something that you do like, and that might take a whole other level of delving into your vision, your mission for your own life, and like, what do you actually care about? But trading shouldn't be something that you do to replace an income. It should be an additional source of income.
Yeah. I think there's some really actionable key questions there that people can think about. And it's so interesting how when you think about your relationship with money, it really just scratches the surface of a wider belief system that really just governs your own self-confidence, the way you do different things, like whether we like it or not. Money is a key factor in our lives. It's the currency of our existence. Basically, it allows us to do things or not. And so understanding your relationship with it, whether you envision yourself making multi-millions of dollars through business or a career, or whether you don't have big ambitions with money and you just want to, like, whatever it is for you, actually working out where you sit with it is so important for so many different things. Can you actually share with me how you got into trading? Because this honestly is something that I personally view requires a lot of discipline. You have to personally want to do it, because it's not like it's a self-driven career, right? You can trade for companies and things like that, but it very much is a you driving it style thing. Did you grow up in finance? Did you grow up always wanting to trade? Or was this something you just came across one day and fell into?
No, I've always had an entrepreneurial mind. So I've always, like, from I think 19 years old, I started my first business. And so I've always been that, you know, business minded and creating long-term wealth minded and things like that. But I accidentally fell into this world completely because what happened was my grandparents were quite influential people and just very well respected in the country that they were from. And then they, you know, bought certain things into Australia that kind of set up Australia. And when my grandfather passed away, we inherited shares. And I didn't know what shares were. Like, I didn't know what I was meant to do with them. Do I keep them? Do I sell them? And these shares were just paying dividends into our bank account every quarter. And I was like, this is nice. This is free money. You know, I would like more free money. I didn't work for this. And so I was attracted to this idea, but I needed to get more intelligent about what do I do with this? And so I started joining Facebook groups on the stock market just to try and learn. And it was just in there, happened to one day randomly come across a comment about Bitcoin. And usually in stock market chat groups, they're very anti-crypto, right? So
the great divide.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's like, oh, that's so volatile, but crypto people love the volatility because that's how you make money. So there's this big kind of battle between whether or not cryptocurrency is a real thing or not. It's just magic internet money. So somebody happened to mention this thing, Bitcoin, and that kind of intrigued me. And so I started researching what this thing was. And I was just attracted to the idea of having that complete control over my money. It made sense to me. There was no real reason for me to want this at the time. Like, it's very different to our times now. Like right now, you know, I don't know if this happens everywhere else or if it's only happening to people in crypto, but there's so many restrictions placed on us by the banks now, telling us how much money we can withdraw at any moment. If we try to do a big withdrawal, what are you spending it on? None of your business.
Yeah.
You know, so
I've had that happen to a lot of my friends,
right.
especially back in Oz.
Yeah, especially in Oz. So it's just getting worse and worse. But that wasn't happening back then. So I didn't have this reason to think, yeah, I need complete control over my money. But I was just really attracted to the idea. And then I learned through that, you know, I was this person living in a first world country where everything was fine and I didn't have to think about these things. What I didn't realize is that with 7 billion people on the planet, 3 billion cannot even get a bank account. They're not even eligible to a bank account. And so you have these people who live in countries where they move away from their family to go and work, to look after their family, and they can't send the money back home. And then it clicked to me, this is what cryptocurrency does, because without having to qualify to be able to get a bank account, they can just send it directly to their family, and you just need a crypto wallet to a crypto wallet, and there's no one in between to say you can or cannot send that money. So that's when I started to understand the need for it, because it wasn't a need where I was from.
Interesting.
But the world is bigger than Australia. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
You know, so yeah, so that's kind of where it all started. And then I wasn't wealthy or anything like that. So it was kind of a natural progression to then go down the path of trading, because, you know, you have two ways to get into cryptocurrency. You either have disposable income from something else that you do, and you put a little bit into cryptocurrency every month or whatnot, and you build up a portfolio over time, or you learn to trade because you don't really have that disposable income. And if you can get good at trading, then you can use those profits to grow your portfolio instead without having to get capital from somewhere else. So that's why I started trading. But I just really, really fell in love with the skill. And you said something very important earlier, where you said you have to actually like it. And so a lot of people will get into trading because they need to make money, and that's the worst reason to do it, because that's, again, is going to play with your emotions. If you lose a trade, you're going to feel really bad. If you win a trade, you're going to get greedy because you're coming from a place of need. You can't do that. You have to really fall in love with the skill and just want to be really good at the skill.
Yeah, 100%. I think, I mean, I've not actually ever spoken about Bitcoin, the role of it, on the show, but I similarly was very fascinated by the tech, and I came from a financial legal background. And so especially when it came to DeFi style projects and their role in transforming the way we do just everyday stuff, I was really impressed with the potential that it had. And so quite similarly, I think crypto has, I mean, for anyone listening, you're probably sitting in two camps. You probably know a bit about it and you see the potential, or you think it's this risky ass,
scam,
dodgy, scammy, you know. But the thing is, with spaces that are unregulated, you're going to have the good and the bad until eventually, I mean, even regulated spaces, look at our financial systems today. They're not all perfect as they stand anyway. So I find that all very interesting. So how old were you when you ventured into the rabbit hole?
I would have been mid-30s,
Okay, and so at the time, so I assume you said you were a little bit younger when you inherited those shares. Kind of between that time and you actually getting into crypto and investing and learning to trade, what filled up your time in that? You said you were quite entrepreneurial.
Yeah. So I've always been a business owner. I started my first business at 19, and then I think I had that for about 5 years. And then I did my next one. By the time I set the next one up, I think I was about 26 or 27. And that was kind of my main, like my business that really, really took off. And so I was doing that for a while. I had really, really big plans with that business. I ended up turning it into a franchise system, and it became the largest of its kind in the world. But then everything kind of took over and I lost my passion for it. And I think when you lose your passion for something, it gets very, very hard to kind of run it with the same drive, And I think probably franchising that business was my biggest mistake, because I didn't realise that not everyone has the same entrepreneurial spirit, and sometimes people want to, I guess, own something to be able to just say they own it and not actually do the work that goes behind it to make it successful. So it became a bit of a drag it was like, just like, like a sheep and the dog behind the sheep, and the dog's like trying to push the sheep in a direction, and it just wasn't working. And everything kind of fell apart from there, and I was pretty devastated for a while. But in that whole period of doing that business, I was trading and not really trading like I do now. I was more just like buying things, and it was when it was a good part of the market. And I'd done okay. I'd done pretty decent, but it was just a hobby. And then when everything fell apart, I didn't know what to do with my life, because I was like, well, I've actually never really worked for anyone. Like, I had my first business at 19, my second at 26-ish. Like, I'm not even really employable. Like, what job would I go for?
What resume do I have?
Like, I had no idea. And I didn't want to start a new business because now I had all this trauma and felt like you can't trust people. The customers of that business all turned against me because they believed the franchisee stories. And I just felt like the world was against me. So I'm like, I don't want customers, I don't want staff, I don't want franchisees. Like, what am I going to do? And that was when I ended up, just deciding, well, I've treated trading as a hobby and made money from it. If I take it seriously, where could it go? And so I just started doing that by myself initially. The thing is, there's downsides, right? So whilst trading can provide you this ultimate freedom, and it ticked all the boxes, didn't need a customer, didn't need a business, it ticked all the boxes. And I got exactly what I wished for. So be careful what you wish for, because
manifesting's real.
Yeah, it really is. Because then I was lonely because I didn't need to speak to people at all in order to make money, So I started joining communities so that I could just have that human interaction. And one thing led to another, and then people were like, start your own thing, and it just kind of happened. And I never thought it would turn into what it is now. And I feel like I always say this, that the difference between my first business and my second business, being this one, is that this one's divinely led. The first one was like, I had intention, I had a 10-year business plan, I had goals, I knew what I was. This one is like, whatever you tell me to do, I just say yes. Like this podcast.
Yeah.
You messaged me and I was like, yep. I just say yes to everything.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Well, I'm glad I've caught you in a moment where, I've connected with your, I guess, divine mission, and your intention and your why is so important. Like, for anyone listening, irrespective of what you do, if you're a careerist, if you have a business, like, your intention is everything. And I really think about all the time, if we go back to that like 80-20 percentage, like the way you think about yourself displays in the opportunities you get. And I'm the biggest proponent of that. Like I've had moments in my life where I don't think that highly of myself. I have a lot of self-doubt. I'm not, necessarily thinking I'm worthy of certain opportunities, and I don't get any. Yeah. Whereas if I shift out of that, and I believe I feel like so much of the time you look at other people for what they have and what you really wish you had, and you think if only everyone else just saw me and believed I could do it, I would do it. But the truth is, you just need to believe that you can do it, and there's so much work that goes behind that. So you going from running, let's just call it a more traditional bricks and mortar style business, to then venturing into trading and creating this business now, are there any like key mindset shifts you really had to adopt, whether it be the way you think about money, the way you approach your day-to-day routine? Like, what was like the key thing, or some of the key things you really had to break or unlearn to really embrace the path you're on now?
Going from having that brick and mortar business to this type of business, I think the thing that I'm grateful for is that even though that was ended in trauma and it was a traumatic thing to go through, there were some very, very good lessons that I got to take into this business. And I worked with a therapist to get through it. And one of the things she said to me, which kind of sticks with me to this day, was we were talking about starting a new business, and I told her I didn't want to because what if I end up in this situation again? And she said to me, but Annie, you'll never end up in this situation again, because what will happen is you will recognize early what's going on because you've been through it before.
You're a different person moving through the same, if not different experience.
Yeah. There were many, many months of anger and frustration and, how could they do this to me kind of thoughts. And then that switched to no one did this to me. It happened for me because, like I said to you, I'd lost my passion. I wasn't in it anyway, and there was a new path for me, a bigger and better path. And this one is definitely a lot better. Just as a business alone, I mean, I tell my friends this all the time. I have an entrepreneur girl group that we catch up with once a month, and they all do different things, I tell them, guys, start an online community. Oh, my God. Like, it's an amazing business because especially if you're creating a community of like-minded people, which you will because that's the business you're creating, right? They're going to be interested in the thing that you are selling, essentially. You get to hang out with your friends every day. It's amazing. And the overheads are lower. You don't have to worry about landlords and cost of rent going up. You don't have to worry about any of those things. But the downside to it is you're going to be working from home. And so then you have to make that separation of, no, I'm at home, but this is work time and this is rest time. And I don't open the computer when it's my personal time. So that's one thing is you have to be self-disciplined to, kind of put the brakes on, and separate and go, no, you need to get out of the house. Because if you work and live at home, there's no need to get out of the house.
Add a gym in the building and you're seriously not leaving.
Exactly. So,
This is interesting, especially because you're a trader and let's be honest, crypto is volatile and it's definitely seasonal, right? You have bear markets, bull markets, which are basically just like up and down markets for those listening that aren't familiar with those terms. So when it's the season to be on, how do you manage that distinction or separation with I'm on work and I'm off work when it kind of feels like, because crypto markets, unlike the stock market, are 24/7.
Correct.
They don't go online and offline.
Yes.
How do you then manage? And I guess this would be akin to anybody listening who goes through really busy periods in their life. Is there a time you feel to be okay with muddling that separation because there's a need in your business or your work, or is it still important for you to have that separation?
Yeah, so balance is really, really important to me as a trader, as a business owner, as a human. And it is something that I definitely teach my community as well, because if you are in a cryptocurrency trading community, it can definitely be hectic 24/7. And I don't think that is helpful to anyone. If you don't take a moment to step away from the charts, then it all becomes blurry and you can't make good decisions. So the trading strategy that I developed is based on the Forex market, and basically took the rules of the Forex market and brought it into crypto to see if there was a correlation and if it kind of worked there. And it did. It worked really, really well. And it does because it's the same market makers, right? So the market makers are the people that move the markets. Price doesn't do anything crazy unless they are ready for that to happen. So market makers don't work 24/7, even though cryptocurrency is 24/7. So therefore, we were able to apply Forex trading times to the cryptocurrency market, and we can pinpoint down to a 2-hour period every day when the market is going to move.
That's useful.
Yeah, and also it means that more weekends than not, the market is not going to move. So in my community, by Friday night, we close down our trades and we say goodnight for the weekend. We all have the weekend to rest. Our Discord goes very, very quiet. And then Sunday night, before New York opens, we're back at it again. And it's very peaceful that way. Everybody gets a chance to wind down. My community understands that my team aren't going to be around because they're resting as well. But yeah, everybody gets to have clarity and they're not forcing trades 24/7 because they don't want to miss something. And I think that's like the thing is, what I say to my community is, on the rare occasion that the market will move rapidly on a weekend, if I've set this rule for myself because I need the balance, because I need to rest, I need to, go out for dinner, whatever I decide to do, and the market moves and I miss that, the only thing I'm going to ask myself is, well, did I have a good weekend? Because if the answer is yes, then it's okay. There's always going to be another trade, So we can't do everything all the time. Yeah. And I think we're so hard on ourselves in this day and age, just in any career, in any, like, especially women, we're so hard on ourselves. We think we have to be everything all the time. It's hard to even fit in a gym session sometimes.
Yeah, I hear you. And to be very honest, that's like really the crux and the essence of this podcast and why I started it. It was back when I was at uni and I was working at a gym and I was trying to have a social life and I was trying to be healthy, and I just felt like I was trying to do it all, and I was juggling everything and nothing was working out. And so I think being very clear on your priorities and having those clear boundaries, which you need to be clear on what's important first to set the boundary. I always talk about that being a 2-step process is very important. And again, like if you miss out on, I always think of it in this way, like you're going to miss out on stuff because you're not a robot, right? Like you're not on 24/7. Yeah. Like build a bot if that's what you want to do, like be on 24/7. But I think it's a challenge many of us go through when things are picking up or there's a lot of momentum or we're in a bull market period. If we're talking about trading, it's hard to create that delineation. Yeah. But it's so important because like our phones, if we never charged it, and we just expect it to be performing all day, every day, it's impossible and that's going to lead to burnout. So having that separation, those small rules, it's important. And I guess that comes from having a strategy that you're confident in as well. Annie, I've really enjoyed chatting with you today. I think we could probably chat for days and days, but I just want to thank you so much for your time. I'll of course link your channel, Trade Travel Chill, in the show notes. And I'm so happy for you that you after everything you've been through in the life you wanted for yourself, it sounds like you're following in your dad's footsteps with your finances and your traveling and your experiences. So thank you so much for sharing all that with us on the show.
No, thank you for having me. It's been amazing.
Likewise, thank you. If you guys have enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes.